All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive that's going to make you think differently about money.
Yeah.
We're cracking open Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that classic by Robert Kiyosaki. He had this wild experience of growing up with two dads, one rich, one not so much, and it totally shaped his views on money.
Yeah, and that's where this whole thing gets interesting, right? You've got Kiyosaki's real dad, super educated, smart guy, but always seemed to be struggling with money. And then you've got rich dad, his best friend's father, total self-made entrepreneur. He's like, hey kid, let me show you the ways of wealth.
Whoa, talk about having your mind blown. Like, imagine one dad saying, the love of money is the root of all evil, and the other's like, nope, it's the lack of money that causes all the trouble.
Intense, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And that contrast, that's the foundation of the whole book. And what's really wild is that Rich Dad wasn't even rich at that point. Not in the way we usually think about it anyway. But the way he thought about money, his whole mindset was totally different. It wasn't about being born lucky. It was about changing your whole perspective. So we're not talking about some get-rich-quick scheme here. This is deeper. It's like rewiring your financial DNA. Where do we even start with that?
Well, Kiyosaki comes out swinging. He says the education most of us get, like the go to school, get a job track, doesn't really teach you about money. He even tells a story about asking his educated dad, how do you make money? And basically getting brushed off.
Ouch. I feel that. It's like we're all told to climb the ladder, but nobody teaches you how to manage your money once you're up there.
It's so common though, right? Kiyosaki even talks about how you see doctors, lawyers, people with fancy degrees struggling with money. Because here's the thing. Earning money and managing money, those are two totally different skills.
Which brings us to the heart of this rich dad philosophy.
Yeah.
It's not about your job or even how much you make. It's about your assets.
Right.
Boom. You
Right.
got it. And that's where Kiyosaki drops his famous line. It's like the golden rule of financial freedom. The rich buy assets. The poor only have expenses. The middle class buy liabilities they think are assets. Okay, drop the mic. That is huge. It completely changes how we should think about spending and what we should be aiming for. Whoa. That quote is like a punch to the gut in a good way.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of like, wait, where do I even begin? How do you actually untangle your assets from your liabilities?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? Kiyosaki had this big aha moment when he realized his educated dad, the one always talking about good jobs and steady paychecks, he was stuck in this loop. Trading time for money over and over. Rich Dad was all about building a system where your money works for you. You know, even if you start small, you got to think long game. And understanding assets and liabilities, that's the key to unlocking that whole system.
Okay, so break it down for us. What makes something an asset in the rich dad world versus a liability?
Think about it like this. Imagine a river flowing right towards you. Assets are like little dams you build to catch that flow, make it work for you. Liabilities, those are leaks, draining your resources away.
Okay, I'm digging this river analogy.
Yeah.
So where does owning a house fall into that? Isn't that most people's biggest asset?
See, that's where things get tricky. Rich Dad would say for most folks, a house is actually a liability disguised as an asset. Think about it. Mortgage payments, property taxes, all the upkeep. It's a constant drain on your cash flow.
Unless you're renting it out and making more than those expenses, right?
Bingo, you're catching on. That's exactly the kind of shift Kiyosaki's talking about. It's not about never buying nice things. It's about being smart with your money, making it work harder for you in the long run.
So it's about breaking free from that cycle of trading time for money. You're building something that generates more money even when you're not working.
Exactly. But even with the best intentions, there are these traps people fall into on their journey to financial freedom. Kiyosaki talks about 5 big ones: fear, cynicism, laziness, bad habits, and arrogance. We got to tackle these head on.
Let's do it. Let's start with fear. Seems pretty natural when it comes to something as important as money. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Fear is a powerful thing. Even rich people feel it. The difference is what you do with it. Do you let it paralyze you, or do you use it to make smarter decisions?
So how does Rich Dad say we should handle those big, scary financial decisions? Especially when it comes to investing.
He's got this great analogy. He tells Kiyosaki to think like a Texan.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Texans and financial wisdom, what's the connection?
Well, Texans have that reputation for being bold, taking risks. They're not afraid to go big, and if they lose big. But they do it on their own terms. There's a certain pride in that, not letting fear hold them back.
So it's not about being reckless with your money. It's more like calculated risk. Knowing you might lose sometimes, but weighing that against the potential rewards.
You got it. It's like driving a car. You wouldn't just refuse to drive because there's a risk of accidents. You learn the rules, wear your seatbelt, drive defensively. Investing is similar. Do your research manage your risk? Make smart choices based on your goals.
Think like a Texan. Be bold, but be informed. Love it. Okay, what about cynicism? We've all met those people who shoot down every new idea, especially when it comes to making money.
Oh yeah, Kiyosaki knew those types. His advice: analyze, don't criticize. Look deeper. Question your assumptions. Get different perspectives before you just dismiss something.
So instead of just assuming the worst, do your homework. Dig deeper and form your own conclusions, based on facts, not fear.
Exactly. And this goes beyond money. Cynicism can really kill creativity in any part of life.
Be a critical thinker. Be open to new ideas, but also be discerning. Don't follow the crowd blindly, but don't shut down new ways of thinking.
That's what financial intelligence is all about. It's not about knowing everything. It's about being curious and having the guts to keep learning.
Okay, so we've covered fear and cynicism, but what about just plain laziness? Isn't that a big one when it comes to money?
You know, it's funny. It's often not even laziness in the couch potato sense. It's more what Kiyosaki calls mental laziness,
Like being afraid to really examine your relationship with money?
Exactly. It's easier to just stick with what, even it's not really working. Kiyosaki talks about people who complain about money, but they won't put in the effort to change things. Yeah. They're always saying, I can't afford to invest, or I don't have time to learn about this stuff.
But like Rich Dad would say, how can you afford not to?
Right. It's about changing your mindset from scarcity to possibility. Instead of, I can't afford it, it's how can I afford it? That little shift can make a huge difference.
It's like that Thomas Edison quote, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. It's about seeing limitations as opportunities.
Totally. And that brings us to the next obstacle: bad habits. Those things we do without even thinking that can really sabotage our finances,
Like living paycheck to paycheck, spending more than we earn, getting buried in debt instead of building assets.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah, those are the big ones. Kiyosaki thought these bad habits often come from a mix of fear and wanting instant gratification. We're so scared of not having enough that we overspend, or we choose short-term pleasure over long-term gain.
So how do we break free from those cycles?
It's all about building financial discipline. Just like any good habit, create a budget, track your spending, make conscious decisions about where your money's going. Delaying gratification is huge here. Remind yourself that the big rewards come from patience and thinking long-term.
Like resisting that dessert tray and going for the healthy choice instead. Your future self will thank you.
Exactly. Now, the last obstacle Kiyosaki talks about might surprise you: arrogance.
Arrogance. Isn't confidence a good thing when it comes to money?
It is, but there's a balance. Kiyosaki saw that people who really know their stuff are often humble because they realize how much they don't know. Arrogance can make you blind to your own weaknesses. You think you have all the answers, so you stop asking questions, you stop learning, and you stop growing.
So how do we make sure we're staying open to new information? Not letting our egos get in the way.
Surround yourself with people who challenge you, people who are smarter than you in certain areas. Be okay with saying, I don't know, and never underestimate mentors.
It's about always learning and growing, which is what we're doing right here by diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So how do we actually put all this into practice? What can our listeners do today to start building their financial IQ?
First things first, remember, it's a journey, not a finish line. It's about constantly learning and adapting. Read books, listen to podcasts, go to seminars, find mentors who click with you. There are tons of resources out there.
It's like building any skill, right? Practice makes perfect.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to start small. Kiyosaki talks about planting seeds in your asset column. Even if it's just a few bucks a week invested in something low risk, you're building that habit of making your money work for you.
So consistency over time, those small actions add up. What else can our listeners do to start thinking more like Rich Dad?
Don't be afraid to make offers. That's a big one. Whether it's asking for a raise at work, trying out a business idea, or making an offer on a property, putting yourself out there can lead to amazing things. The worst that can happen is someone says no.
It's like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right?
You never know unless you try.
You got it. And lastly, one of the most powerful things you can do is pay yourself first.
I've heard that before, but never really understood it. What does it actually mean?
Most people, they pay their bills, spend whatever's left, and then wonder where all their money went. Rich Dad flips the script.
Yeah.
He says, take a chunk of your income and put it towards savings and investing before anything else.
So your financial future becomes a non-negotiable expense. I like that.
That's it. It's about making your financial well-being a priority, just like your health or your relationships. It might feel weird at first, but you'd be surprised how fast you adapt.
So to wrap it all up, Rich Dad Poor Dad isn't some magic formula. It's about building your knowledge, about money taking control, and creating more options for your future.
And it all starts with that first step. So what's one small action you can take today to start building your own path to financial freedom? Think about that as we finish up this deep dive. And remember, you've got the power to shape your financial future.